right, welcome to AdSquawk, your weekly deep dive into all things advertising. Grab a drink, pull up a chair, and let's talk shop. I'm your host, Sean. Today I'm joined by...
Hello, Monsieur Jody.
Eddie.
Danielle.
And over in the bird's nest.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, their mic isn't
No,
on.
try it again. Try it again.
We got Mr. Kelly
Mr.
joining us
K-Dog.
again.
We're in the nest.
That
Our mic
happens
isn't
to Kelly
on.
every time, and it's every time you try to use K-Dog, and I feel like that's indicative of
Yeah.
don't give
We're
yourself
obviously
a
at the
name.
kids' table. My name is Kelly.
Again, there's no table there.
And joining us for the first time,
Yay!
Kelly and
Hello.
Kelsey.
It's me.
It's Kelsey, the sweetest angel
Welcome,
on
Kelly
the
and
planet.
Kelsey show today.
we are happy to have you.
So happy. So happy.
So what's good, guys?
What's good?
What's good?
Gucci?
Right
Everything.
now, what is good is this 10-year-old bullet bourbon in my glass. I
Bourbon
love
is
the
It's a little
folks
classier
at
than
Bullet
Monster.
are friends of mine.
I like the size of your glass.
Yes, there you go. This is
Well
for-
thought out.
All right, well, getting into today's first topic, we are introducing a little bit of a new segment called One Flew Over. It's a reference to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And let's talk about crazy shit that's happening in the world of advertising and media right now. Are you guys familiar with Defy Media at all?
A little
I
bit.
am now
Little bit.
after
Yeah.
some reading.
So Defy Media is a MCN multi-channel network on YouTube. And this past November, they just disappeared. It's one of those.
How does that even
It's
happen?
one of those sign on the door.
Have you ever heard of Trump University or
I think it just happened.
How does that
Trump
even happen?
Casino or
So yeah,
MySpace?
MySpace.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They got sold
I
at
think
least.
let's not
Well,
put those two things.
Somebody put some
One
money
of
in
these
the
things
pocket.
is not like the other.
Area.
So Defy was a MCN multi-channel network on YouTube. They owned and operated about 50 different channels. Some of the biggest brands on YouTube, including Smosh, Smosh Games, Clever Media, Break.com, The Escapist, and The Game Theorists, and kind of Matt Pat and his little different segments and channels like that, Game Theorists and Film Theorists, which he was the one who, his content initially brought this to my attention. Essentially what it boils down to is that $1.7 million in advertising revenue went away with this, and all of these channels were left homeless.
Went to somebody's account.
Yeah.
But hold on.
This
Do
alleged.
you think they actually had that much ad revenue? I believe that that's the ad revenue that the people were promised that they were owed.
Right.
But I'm not convinced that the whole platform was generating the revenue the people who were on the platform thought.
That they were
Yeah,
Kind of like Fire Festival.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
it was a shell game.
So
Potentially.
So you're right. It was a shell game in some instances. So for example, though. Yeah. For example, the video that Matt Pat put up discussing this, I believe when I last checked, was at 5.4 million views on its own. Just one video.
Wow.
He's a content creator. He's been around for a long time. He actually was an employee of Defy Media in the early days. And so he has a little bit better insight than I think some of these other smaller channels that might have been, held up in it. Probably most of that ad revenue was in the top 5 to 10 channels. And then a lot of the channels underneath that had,
So Smosh was part of that, correct?
Smosh was part of that. And they released a video as well saying Smosh is homeless.
That was a pretty funny video. I did see that.
But I guess my question is this. Do you think that Defy actually collected all that ad revenue from the advertisers?
So this is how MCNs work. So they interface directly with YouTube and essentially own the channels.
Right.
So individual YouTube channels automatically gain their revenue through AdSense based on the CPMs that are coming in through that. So you can essentially backwards logic your way into, or not backwards logic, but essentially reverse engineer this total based on the total amount of views over a certain amount of time based on an average CPM for YouTube. So it is actually a pretty easy number to come to if you have all of that data in front of you and you're able to aggregate all of that through these channels. So Matt Pat used one example of there was a time where Defy came in and asked them to push their AdSense revenue for checks for a month. And he said we wanted to be a good partner, so we all
Sure.
agreed.
Sure.
And what
They
it really
didn't
came
pad their
down to
books.
was cooking the books and making it look like Defy had a higher in-house valuation than they actually did. The other video that was that I shared was the Anthony Padilla, the original creator of Smosh. He sold Smosh to Defy Media
For stock.
for $0.
Oh,
well,
I
that's
did see
just-
that guy.
But even he admitted, that's
He was
my
like,
bad.
that was a bad
Yeah.
business decision.
I mean-
And they were a private company. They never went public. And they've been, I didn't realize this. Defy had been around since the mid 90s under a different ownership name. Originally, they were Alloy Online, Alloy Digital. And then the final company was formed when it merged with Break Media in 2013. So, I think many different things over the years. Obviously, that's pre-YouTube.
Yeah, that's for
but,
YouTube. Yeah.
Ultimately, when the Defy Media came to existence in 2013 when it merged with Break. So
Was the plan to go public all along?
I think that was the pitched plan.
or was that just a lie?
Right. I mean, and who knows except,
Well, they're padding the books to try and establish value.
Right.
To get additional financing investments.
yes.
Okay. So, because they did get investment money prior to them disappearing, right?
Yeah,
They
I mean,
got like millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
Right?
Defy was a huge company. I mean, that's the thing. Like they're not the only MCN that's been accused of this in the past. This is kind of an ongoing business model, but because the benefit to the YouTube creator to join an MCN is kind of multifaceted. There's legal protection. So essentially these big companies obviously can afford to have lawyers and copyright laws and all that. They can manage channels. They can give guidance on content and production value.
They can clear copyrights.
They can
right?
clear copyright. So that's exactly. So if some other company comes in and claims copyright on your video, they are the only ones that YouTube really grants the proper access or, on their end to expedite that process so your channel doesn't get a strike and sits just kind of in limbo while otherwise, being held down, and thus you can't get views, you can't get revenue.
Are they involved in how much an advertiser pays per view?
No. So
Who sets that rate?
So that's through YouTube itself, through Google AdSense. So obviously,
Right.
So YouTube is owned by Google,
Right.
and it is a part of the overall Google advertising network that hits display advertising, it hits video on YouTube, it hits across all of their different partners as well as search.
So the MCN is strictly a middleman between YouTube and the content provider.
correct.
Right.
So the MCNs are not owned by
But
YouTube.
all the money was flowing through the MCN.
Yes.
First.
Yeah.
And
So Matt,
So
he
how
talked
is this
about that.
any different than how every
think you're gonna say
advertising
what I'm saying.
agency ever gets in
Yeah.
trouble, which is they collect 100% of their media.
Use it to pay it.
They only 15% of that back in the day. Now it's more like 90-10 or 93-7 or something. But let's say 15% of that is their money and the other 85% is the media's money. And they just float the media for 2-3 months and they cash flow using their clients' money. And if you're profitable, you can do that all day long. Right? If you're not profitable, you will eventually run out of clients' money and be unable to pay the media. So in this, I mean, this is this has been happening since the beginning of time. So in this case, the media in this scenario is the content provider, the MCN is the agency, and the YouTube is the client. Or other way around.
yeah, I think you got it the other way
Other way around.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, yep.
and you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head.
Difference being, here's the difference. There are very few people who understand or are as connected to this as someone like you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
a lot of
so
stuff.
because it is new media and complicated, there's very few people, watching this, which would never, if there were more people watching it, it wouldn't prevent it from having happened, but it would have prevented it from being so large before it happened. Right. So that was the difference. These guys are going to go try to go public. So they cook the books, make everything look great. And if the timing works out just perfect, which is what sociopaths and people who do these sorts of things.
This reminds me of somebody.
Sociopaths
Billy.
and do these sorts of things count on is that it's all going to dovetail and be fine. At the very beginning, it was never going to be fine, but the people who do these sorts of things can convince themselves that it will be fine. I did this and I hope I'm not a sociopath, but I did this my freshman year of college when in my second semester, I stopped going to class, but I convinced myself that somehow, miraculously, it would all be okay.
You'll self-teach yourself.
Yeah, and
I mean, you were really
and
only
I
defrauding
basically
one
just,
investor.
I just ran out the semester. I went to a lot of parties, and I just sort of disassociated myself from reality
Weird.
until you just couldn't.
I thought
until,
you'd
you
be
know.
a student in the library all day till it closed. They'd have to
No.
kick you out.
Well, later in life.
Yeah. I want to talk about Matt Pat and then the other guy, I think Anthony Padilla.
Yep.
So a lot of what it seemed like to me is that they kept saying it's our money. It shouldn't filter through them. It's like, well, that's why you sign a contract with them. And it seems like, while it sucks and it may be unfair, it just seems like you signed a shitty contract.
And they did.
And they did. And Matt Pat he offered advice at the end of his video to future content creators, which I thought was great. But the advice, there were 4 pieces of advice, and it just further instilled my idea that it was like, you signed a bad contract.
Right.
And it's like, I feel badly for you, but you gotta
Lesson
own up
learned.
to a little bit of your responsibility
Right.
in this.
So I believe that through this, if we live in a good world that ultimately fosters good business practice. And
I'm sorry, what?
I know. So ultimately, what I'm saying is that if you compare this to other industries where there have been big scandals in the past, people will now be watchdogging for this, and ultimately, businesses that have better practices in place should hopefully float to the top. Now, is that going to happen? Probably not. And the thing about YouTube is usually you're dealing with a lot younger content creators who are running businesses that they've started themselves kind of ad hoc through, this platform and been able to create that. And now are a little bit more gullible in terms of, this big company comes with this great opportunity and they
They offer you stock
They offer you stock. And
when there's no stock.
What's that word?
yeah, and a lot of them could have survived on their own, but it's such a new platform, even being, 10, 15 years old now, and it's a completely different industry than traditional television is, even though,
Yeah. I just hope that President Trump doesn't get wind of this, because he'll be like, ooh,
Yeah.
I have an
you
idea.
could do
I
that?
have an idea.
An original idea.
Him and Billy
Yeah.
teaming up.
Oh my god!
I
Don't
feel
even
like
say that.
YouTubers have, at least to me, because I'm not super ingrained into the YouTube world, I feel like YouTubers have this reputation of being kind of melodramatic about things. Like there's parodies of it on the internet, like YouTuber video, I almost died, and then it's like them telling a story about how they like tripped and fell one time.
Right.
And that's
Right.
And that,
clickbait. It's clickbait.
it's for sure clickbait, but I feel like this is also probably insensitive and crass, but I feel like they were so dramatic, and I feel like their delivery of their message took away from the message itself. Because, yeah, obviously they have a right to be upset, but it's like, you're not getting me on your side. And then Matt Pat said a funny thing. He's like, so what we need to do now is share this, and it will get to the bankers, and they'll see, and they'll give us their money. And I was, in my head,
There's
I was
some
like,
naivety there.
you aren't super in touch with bankers, and I don't think any bankers have seen this.
Right.
Like, have you guys, I'm sure you have in your careers, but represented a bank and just...
Not the top of the heap from the standpoint of business acumen.
And they're just
That was well
perusing
put.
YouTube.
Cutting edge of new media.
Right. Right.
I laughed out loud at that. I was like, bankers are not watching this
Yeah.
video, my guy.
Smash that like button,
Yeah.
bankers.
Right.
Smash
So
that motherfucking like button. That's funny.
so I think where this conversation ultimately lends itself to people who work in advertising is that while ultimately these channels are still going to exist and people are still going to be purchasing ads through YouTube, it's important to just keep in mind that if this content doesn't ultimately get if content creators aren't getting the advertising revenue that they are earning and ultimately can't create this, good engaging content anymore, does it take away from the content as an advertising platform? Because in my opinion, YouTube's a great way. It's highly targetable, both through demographic and contextual and, different behavioral standpoints. You can put short, long form content, like short, like 15-second spots, or, even upwards. I've seen Vice and like Red Bull advertise like half-an-hour documentaries that there's so it's essentially you can play your ad, it's skippable after 30 seconds, but you're just paying the impression to get it in front of whatever someone chose to watch, and just to see if they watch it and engage with it, maybe like the channel, follow that, and then ultimately further that, as someone who's organically getting that content.
Is there metrics for I watched 5 seconds, 10 seconds?
Yes. You get drop-off rate, you get view rate. I've never run anything longer than I think a 5-minute spot. Yeah. But obviously most of your engagement is going to drop off after 15 to 30 seconds. That's why short form ads work the best. But it is an interesting kind of thought experiment in just getting impressions. Ty Lopez, I hate referencing Ty Lopez, did this a lot back in the day when he was just trying to get kind of his motivational.
Is that a YouTube person?
He was on YouTube. He like kind of ran his own like motivational.
Doesn't he sell books?
Yeah, he reads a book a day. Yeah. I think he was a Bitcoin investor. There's a lot of stuff.
Say no more.
There was a point in YouTube videos where I could not go more than 2 videos without seeing one of his ads in front of it, and it was just like he was paying insane amounts of money just to get in front of people in a similar situation. So from a brand awareness standpoint,
which is the same guys that did this would do real estate schools.
Exactly.
And butts and seats. Listen, if you can, content will always find a home. So technology is progressing to the extent that we are learning new ways to deliver content. If content can find a home and that home can find an audience, then people will advertise in it. Simple as that. So, what is the next piece of technology? Well, there are people on this planet Earth who actually know that, and there are people who think they know that and are wrong.
Yep.
But there will be another new technology that delivers content.
Always.
And as long as people are willing to create content, there will be channels for it. Now, generally, the early adopters of creating content on any given platform have to find things out the hard way.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out what that channel does well, and so they have to start to tailor their content to it. And until that happens, then it's kind of a big strange world of a mix of advertising and editorial and all sorts of things. It's like soap operas were to television. Those were television shows completely owned and run and cast and directed and created by consumer brand companies, by soap companies. That's why they're called soap operas. So if you put that kind of television in front of somebody 10 years ago, they'd go, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It would be, they're just popping in the middle with somebody saying, and I love my Tide detergent. And but then if you put it 10 years later, you put that content where they go, oh, that's kind of like a lot of like reality TV. Everything cycles, right? So there's the natural cycle of how content progresses through a channel, and then there's constant technology creating new channels, and those cycles are all timed out differently, and audiences jump from channel to channel based upon their age and their history and their education and all sorts of other demographics, and that's why we have ad agencies, folks, to figure all that shit out. And Sean said about 30 things that I didn't understand, and I'm his boss. So, but that's what we do.
I have a note on here that's like, I need Sean to explain. Let me find it. I need Sean to explain why a YouTuber might get dropped by AdSense and what that means, because that was a piece that either I read in the article that we'll link to in the description of this episode, or the videos.
They get dropped for things like
copyright infringement,
copyright infringement, child,
exploitation.
Yeah.
So one note on your question. there's a lot of reasons why YouTube may or may not drop someone from AdSense. There's essentially a 3-strike system. So you might get a copyright strike. You might get a even if it's a false copyright strike. I've seen musical artists who have uploaded their own music and had someone go on and claim that as their own, get a strike.
Why? Because it was Pharrell?
It was,
And it was actually
right.
not.
That's a conversation about sampling. It is very different.
In the weeds.
In the weeds. Ultimately, so we've actually had a client in the YouTube space previously, and we've dealt with a lot of kind of the big fiasco about a year and a half ago that was in the YouTube Kids space when there was a lot.
All the Chinese.
I'm with
and
you guys now.
Russian,
There was a lot of kind of foreign interest in kind of creating these cookie cutter kids content that was very not child friendly, just for gaming the YouTube algorithm and getting in front of as many impressions as possible so they could get tons of money in ad revenue. And ultimately, they cracked down heavily on that. YouTube historically, because they've grown so much so quickly, have had to tackle these different issues that they come up and these different PR nightmares as they come up. And every year it's something different, and they're changing policies and they're going back and forth on things, and they're really trying to kind of just create an even playing field across the entire network. But I mean, okay, so according just for Defy Media, they had 38 million followers across all their channels, 221 million unique visitors a month, and its channels reached 80 million viewers monthly.
Do you have how many channels they have?
So that was 50 that was
50 channels?
that was taken down, or that were a part of this. But there's been, over the years, there's been many, I think, that have come and gone. So that's just one of these MCNs. I mean, YouTube's the biggest video platform on the planet. I mean, they're owned by Google, which is the largest search engine. So a lot of people underestimate the scope of this. It's billions and billions of hours of content all the time that people are uploading. No one can manually look at all this. And so
They reference that.
it's very community focused in terms of like, oh, I see something, I'm policing it and reporting it. Then someone manually checks it however many months down the road after it's in the queue. And in that time, the channel may or may not have been taken down. So that's what these MCNs do, is essentially come in and act as a protective layer.
That's what they're supposed to. In
They're supposed
theory,
to do.
In
I mean,
theory, that's what they
yes.
do. But that's
not just a theory.
Yeah, and then they were saying that because
It's game theory.
they manage so many channels, it was impossible for them to even do their job.
Nerd joke.
It went over my head because I don't know.
That's Matt Pat's
fucking
channel's
get a
game
lot of
theory.
this.
So
Oh.
that's how he ends every video.
I just-
It's like-
I feel like Smosh
Yes.
Smosh?
just makes me feel like I'm talking like Jeff Spicoli.
Yeah, for sure. Also, so much energy
So
in that
smart.
video.
they're famous for that.
Also, why do I recognize this guy? He's from something I've seen
Let me see.
outside of YouTube.
Yeah,
Backwards
so-
hat.
So him and Courtney Miller, who's the blonde in front, all of Smosh people have been appearing in a bunch of stuff lately since this kind of happened, but they both appeared in Sugar Pine 7 as kind of sub characters. There's a whole other rabbit hole we'll go down, I'm sure,
I've
some
seen
other
him
day.
in something.
But yeah, so it's not like they don't.
I am a 51-year-old man who has not a fuck idea what you're talking
I'm
about.
26
There's a lot of
years
words
old,
that just
and I
came out of
don't
my
have
mouth
any-
that I'm sure you didn't
Yeah.
understand. So
You blacked out.
Well, hold on. Now, hey, easy. A lot of words that came out of my mouth that you didn't know. I understood all the words.
do you know what a Sugar Pine 7 is?
No, I don't know what
And
that is.
I don't
But I
either.
know what the three words sugar pine and seven.
I don't
mean.
know what Sugar Pine
kidding.
7 is, but I recognize
The
him
fuck
from
is
something.
Sugar Pine
like,
7?
Does he
It's a
have
show?
It's a
real
channel.
like
Channel,
TV
right.
or movie?
I know who Diamond
acting experience?
Minecart is. My son watches that dude. Do you know who Diamond Minecart is? Oh,
Is that a
blank look
Minecrafter?
on your face.
It's a Minecrafter.
He's all games. He's
He's all
Minecraft
Oh, okay.
and Fortnite.
Oh, dude, all the Fortnite.
He's got purple. He's got purple hair. He's a UK guy, and he's.
Oh, I've seen him.
I know
He
what you're
makes
talking
a shit ton of money.
Yep.
I feel like we can move on.
No, I think we covered this really well. I appreciate you guys taking the time to deep
Yeah.
dive into a topic that
I had to take notes on this one because it's like very much so outside
this
of
is like
my
near
realm.
and dear to me. I'm a
Yeah.
big YouTube fan.
No,
So,
I'm into it. I'm learning.
Lots of lessons learned.
Lots of lessons
I
learned.
still got to know where Backwards Hat, where I know him from. Do you know his name?
I don't know it off the top of my
You're gonna
head.
have to-
Figure that out.
We're gonna have to figure that out. Okay,
Is it
that's time
either
for
Zach or Cody from The Sweet Life?
later. It's neither nor.
Is it a Chad?
And those are the Sprouse twins. You can find
The
one of them.
Sprouse twins. Yeah,
on
one of
Riverdale.
them's in Riverdale.
Yeah, you know that.
Jughead.
Jughead Jones. Shut up.
Jughead Jones.
Okay, Livy, where'd you
Yeah.
learn that?
All right, 51-year-old
Welcome
man.
to the Riverdale podcast. Where
Just saying.
I could do a recap of it if
Yep.
you wanted to.
So there's a girl. There's a girl.
Oh no.
My daughter is 14 and she's starting to be
She's a freshman
interested
in high school.
Freshman in high school, starting to be interested in boys. And there's a kid on my son's basketball team named Alan, and his brother is also
Oh.
a freshman. I thought
Okay,
he
I
was
was
a very
gonna
good-looking young man, and his name's Hiram.
Oh!
And so
Riverdale.
I went back and I'm like, hey, have you ever thought of
I'm too old to
you
watch
ever
that.
thought of maybe because there's a Sadie Hawkins dance coming up? I mean,
They go to the
Hiram
same
seems like
school?
yeah, they go to the same school. Hiram looks like that. And Dominic walks in. Hiram Lodge.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
What did Livy say though?
And I was pretty proud of myself for understanding the whole reference.
Yeah.
Livy kind of just didn't say anything, and then her mom kind of butt in and said something like, "Well, you probably want someone taller like your father." I think,
Ouch.
which was
So Hiram's a,
was meant to just cock block the whole situation because
is
my
that
wife
a
doesn't
dig
want
to
her to
Mark
date anyone.
Consuelos? Or the real Hiram?
No, she's basically. I think she's basically setting Livy up for don't date anyone until they're 6'2".
Oh.
And
real
then that
Hiram.
Okay, but that opens the door for her to
prolongs
start
the whole
dating
thing.
seniors and shit, and that's what you want to watch out for, Dad.
Well, see, I'm
Tell
not,
Tracy that if she
you
listens.
tell Tracy, that.
if you're
Trust me,
listening
it'll
to
come
this,
better from you.
Hi, Tracy.
Oh, now we have a reason for her to listen to podcasts.
Okay.
Number 4 because
Or just don't talk to Livy.
Because
Livy's a good kid, so
she's
you don't need anything.
listened, but she's very gently let me know that she doesn't think she's in the target audience.
Oh. I hope I didn't offend her.
Did she leave us 5 stars?
I've called you a bitch on the podcast a few times. I hope that didn't upset her.
I just bet she applauded that. You tell him.
What'd you call yourself? K what?
K-Dog.
K-Dog.
K-Dog. I think she heard that and said, I'm out.
I'm done.
She heard it in the background and said, I'm out.
Rude.
It's funny.
Are we moving?
We're moving. All right.
right.
So I want to kind of shift the conversation a little
Yeah.
bit. Bring in Kelly and Kelsey,
Kelly and Kelsey are taking
so they can contribute their expertise on topic number 2 today.
Hello?
Welcome to the show.
You got it. You got it.
First of all, thanks for having us. Letting creative people talk is not a good idea, but let's
No, it's
go
great.
for
We're
it.
never
No.
a good idea, but we're
You're not
here.
getting out of it now.
I
Oh, yeah. You
know.
guys are in.
Yep. Let's talk about packages. Packaging.
No.
Packages.
You can say it.
You stop it.
It's an equal opportunity podcast.
Literally on my notes it says let's talk about packages.
Mhm.
Packaging.
David
Packaging.
Bowie, great package.
Great.
Labyrinth.
Very,
That, yes.
Very, very, very,
Disturbing.
Yeah.
very
well,
bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Disturbing.
What is the
They're
best packaged consumer product out there right now in each of these designers' opinions?
oh, if I was gonna be a dork about it, I would say anything Apple, hands down.
Apple's good.
With all like the basics you gotta check off the list for good packaging, they just do a great job. As boring as it is, it seems valuable. I feel like it weighs the right amount. Everything has its place. Every time you get a product from them, you can tell someone thought about it. Unlike the iPad where they made the iPencil plug directly into the bottom for some little kid to run by and break it off. Not a good choice,
Such
but
I mean,
a poor design.
yeah.
Product
horrible.
design is like B+. Packaging
yeah.
is like A+. How about
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
There you go.
You have to invent a new plug every device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how they keep you.
That's
They
intentional.
They
do.
catch you.
It's jerk.
I got so many
Accessories.
dongles. I think my
You had to
dongles,
get more
my dongles are
for
worth
this
more than my
last
computer. I
upgrade.
think.
Yeah.
0 USB ports, but
I think that you're
All the
asshole.
dongles.
that's easy to prove because all you have to do is look at how many people are copying Apple's packaging, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
I mean, how often do you hear we're the Apple of toothbrushes, or we're the iPad of toothbrushes, or whatever?
yeah.
I've never
You
heard
know,
that.
Everyone's copying that, but they don't do it. They still don't do it as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Even the cardboard sliding into the slightly larger cardboard piece just
Yeah.
has that nice little vacuum, and you can tell that it's designed for it.
The Beats
So, yeah.
headphones, kind of similar type of
I
deal.
don't have any of those.
They're nice packages.
they're great.
Yeah. Owned
They
by-
are
well, there
available,
you go.
but not originally.
Not originally. Yeah.
Okay.
What's
Yeah.
Kelsey's
You
favorite
called it.
example of best packaging?
I feel like I went on a little bit of a deep end for this. I'm sorry, I'm not.
No, you're good.
How do I hold my hand when I talk? Okay.
Hold your
Where do
hand.
my hands go?
Where did my hands go? I really honestly think that I wrote down Brandless. Have you heard of that company?
No.
So I think Brandless, they are very minimalist, but it's very, very dictated by color and dictated about, like with transparency, it's just very upfront about what the product is. There's no hoo-ha, there's nothing. The only thing about that company is you have to buy a membership in order to purchase products from them. So
I've heard about these guys.
yeah. So, I mean, I think that their stuff is really beautiful. And I was talking to Kelly earlier about like, what if like you had an open concept pantry, right? And you just had a Brandless subscription. All you had was color. I think it would be so beautiful.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, and I would nerd out the whole time if I was someone's house. Like, okay, what are all these products?
I like that
Yeah.
cute little Japanese lady that's on all the talk shows
Marie
right now. I would
Kondo?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it
Yeah.
bring you joy?
So
Yes, it
so
does.
Brandless
All
is
of the joy.
the brand.
Brandless is the brand.
So it's not Brandless at all.
That's
It's not Brandless at all. They
it's
have
the
a brand.
brilliance.
Right.
Don't
That's
name
the
it.
brilliance.
Prince
Right.
Prince went with the symbol,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is hard to explain as well. But I agree with the transparency. I think when you get into children's toys or food or anything like that, you just want to see what you're getting. Whole chicken in a can.
No, you don't want to see that.
No. Well,
yum.
I mean,
I still don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
I've bought maybe 6 of them in my life to give away as to like bring to
You
Thanksgiving
brought
dinner.
one in the office.
Yeah, I did.
Just gag you.
Because
Ben ate
it's
it.
He brought a fleet of canned goods
think
to the
Ben ate
office.
some
I think
of it.
we have spam here somewhere.
mainly meats. But that's a good example of like packaging that you probably should thoroughly
Don't show,
explain
tell.
what's in there.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't want to show the chicken. And
Do
actually,
not want to see it.
No, you don't.
have you seen it?
Right?
Have you poured one out?
Oh yeah.
Is
For
it
your homies.
For your home.
straight up whole chicken or what are we talking
Well, yeah. It looks like it's a very white. Have you not ever opened
I've
one
never
of these ones
opened
you
one.
bought?
I'm
Yeah,
terrified.
Wait a minute. You've
Fleshy
purchased
white.
I
them.
give them away to people.
It's
And you don't
fleshy and
know?
it's white and it's covered in a gelatinous sort of thing, and it does that. You know how cranberries go?
Oh. Is it parted?
That's
or-
great for the audio listeners.
No, it's just like
It's a whole
like all
chicken.
stuffed in there, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it pretty much falls apart.
So
I can't get
I
the
think-
image
I
of him
think-
doing that out of my
It looks a
I-
lot like those pig fetuses that were in your
Oh.
biology class in high school,
Oh, yeah.
or in the creepy museum.
We never got to dissect any animals.
The creepy
in my high
museum.
Oh,
school.
It's
man.
always had-
We had to dissect a frog and I cried.
Yep.
I'm too soft.
Now they do salmon. They get to
I can still remember how those.
do you just
dang
get it like? Is
frogs
it just some
smell.
sashimi when
That
it's done? Like,
formaldehyde.
Yeah, and then they have sushi.
exactly.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I like that.
But
Very useful.
I think on that note, I think that when you have something that's well packaged and well designed, it makes sense. I think that's just the whole point of it. Like packaging makes sense. So it always deals with what's in the packaging because the baseline for packaging is something that transports or protects a product, correct? So in order to like go from there, like I think Brandless does its job, even though it makes no sense to come full circle. I mean, to have a brand called
I agree.
But-
It does its job to a certain audience. Like if you go to an Albertsons and you see Signature or Sam's Choice or something, there's not a lot of frills and gimmicks. It's cheese, and they have a little window in there, and you see the cheese, and you're like, I want orange cheese. Here's my orange cheese. It's cheaper. And then you get the premium brands that put the pictures of the cows and the farmers on there, and it's twice as much. So Brandless is a hard one for me because it's like the examples I saw was like a crescent wrench, and it was just on a piece of cardboard, and it was covered in Saran wrap. So I'm getting crescent wrench. That's what I came for, but I might be persuaded if the packaging had more about the crescent wrench or showed it on like a hot rod and you're like, yeah, that's probably a better crescent wrench than the generic looking one, which is kind of the packaging, right? It's this billboard or mini commercial that you put on a shelf to compete against other mini commercials, like in the beer aisle, right?
Right.
You walk down there's 100 different choices. Which beer jumps out and says that beer probably tastes good? And
Yeah.
and honestly, I've made labels. Yeah. I'll look like a hipster. I'll look like a mountain man, or I'll look fancy if I drink this. Fancy, so like there's plenty of fancy.
What
beers
about
out there.
like wine bottles or liquor bottles? Like there's some super
totally
cool.
the same.
Yeah.
And even down to what you package it in, right?
Right.
If you get a liquor bottle in plastic, you automatically go, It's gonna be a hobo dream night. Like,
Yeah.
like this is not gonna be a great drink.
It's kamchatka.
Next
High
to
school
and
memories.
quite honestly, there's not too much differences when it comes to some beer, especially. And I'll just talk about beer because I know the most about it
Right.
and how they're made. But one beer in a package is, you look at it and say that's a $12 six pack. You look at another, I'll pay $18 for that. There's not a difference there. It's between New Belgium and maybe a local guy who didn't take time to package it correctly. It's the same ingredients. And quite honestly, just like wine, the shittier looking packaging might be better wine than the $200 bottle that has beautiful illustration or design on it. So again, it's that billboard. It's that quick message to that consumer that, like, pick us.
Well, and product recognition.
We took our branding seriously and our packaging seriously. So hopefully we take what we make seriously.
Right. Well, and that gets proven out over time, right? So if Apple products just simply weren't intuitive and didn't work well, all the packaging in the world wouldn't have saved it. But the real 1-2 punch comes is when you've got a great product and then you package it appropriately, package it well, and that lifts it even higher, right?
Right.
Right. And then honestly, like, then from there, like, once you've hit all those marks, like, you'll start to create a brand loyalty because you know what you're getting and you know the quality of it. So people keep on coming back for that reason. Not only that, but for the integration, because, you know, I don't want to
So what's going to
have
happen?
a computer and a phone
what's
that
gonna
can't talk
happen
to each
with
other.
kind of an anti-packaging movement? In other words, I'm a sucker for things that add convenience, like Hunt's. For a while, I'm a cook, and Hunt's made tomato paste that was in like a plastic squeezy thing. So all I had to do was rip the top off like a ketchup packet, and I could squeeze tomato paste into my stock or whatever. Loved it. I think they're still making them. My local grocer doesn't carry it anymore, but it was a lot of packaging.
Right.
I was throwing a lot away that was not recyclable, and I thought about that. Our Keurig cups is a great example.
Right.
A Keurig is a very handy thing to have around, but I went to the guy that owns the gym I work out in and said, "Hey, let's look at getting a coffee system here because we're throwing a lot of plastic away every day." So where does that start to come into the equation? And will there be a new design movement that is not only about aesthetics but also about new materials? I saw plastic forks, not plastic forks, but forks and spoons made out of
Bamboo.
avocado seeds.
Avocado seeds.
Oh, really?
Cool.
That's cool.
That
I saw that.
biodegrade.
Oh, I love
so
that.
think about that whole as a career. The blending of science and probably mechanical engineering and designers.
I can't remember where I read it, but I read somewhere where like 30% of municipal waste is just from packaging itself, not from food or anything else like that, but it's just packaging. Like, it's just the things that transport and carry the product from producer to consumer, which is kind of insane. But I think that it's also, we're in a time of enlightenment and we're in a time of figuring things out and a time of change. So I think that having those things go forth is going to directly affect it, which I'm kind of stoked for. I don't know.
I think it's a great
interesting.
opportunity.
It is.
I think that you can. I think it's another problem that we're gonna solve in a very cool way. And I don't know how it's gonna flush out, obviously, but we're so used to being able to say, like, we need this opportunity for brand recognition and for brand, the opportunity for brand loyalty and stuff like that. But I think that you can get that in so many other ways. Like, if you have a mark and if someone can identify that with a good product, I think that in my mind speaks like a lot more than having a flashy package. But
Yeah, it
Flashy
does.
package.
still flashy.
Let me rain plastic on this parade. I have a 3-year-old at home, and the hottest thing right now are these LOL dolls,
Yeah.
a surprise pack, or just blind bags. Have you guys
Yeah.
heard of this?
Oh,
Blind
yeah.
bags?
Oh yeah, you just
So-
don't know what you're gonna get.
You don't know what you're gonna get. So let me walk you through this. She loves LOL dolls. There's these little plastic dolls. They have little shoes. You can change out their clothes and stuff, but they come in these plastic capsules that no shit is wrapped 3 or 4 times in plastic, because part of the experience is you peel off the first layer and it has a joke in there and you read it and no one gives a shit. And you peel off the second layer, and then in that second layer, before you actually get to the toy, is a little thing of stickers that printed on plastic.
Aw.
And then you unwrap that and you get to this plastic capsule, and you open that and spills out 5 other tiny bags of plastic. and there's like a 4x4-inch plastic bag with shoes that are like barely bigger than your fingernail. So
Vacuum.
why I think like food and beverage industry, when you think about straws or how they're packaging, I think they're making leaps forward because there's so much more pressure on them. But when I see these LOL dolls or these blind bags, I'm like, man, they're honestly, like, you end up with a fistful of plastic, and there's more plastic that went into the packaging than the actual toy itself. And I just think if there's 3 of these in my house, how many of these exist? How many have been opened? And you could fill a giant landfill just with this packaging, and it kind of makes me sad. But then my daughter's all stoked.
But that's
I'm
it.
like, fuck
It's
the dolphin.
It's the experience for her to open
We're
it.
all gonna die anyways. One person can't make a difference.
Right.
She's not gonna know where that is a week from now. The whole thing was
straw.
it was the temporary experience of opening that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's part of their
It's so
strategy.
instant gratification.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
And I think that's like the perfect topic to talk about experience. Like most of the time with packaging, like consumers are buying an experience. Like I used to buy these Ritual multivitamins for women. They're beautiful. Look them up. They're really great. But like they were
Endorsement.
Yeah. But just getting that packaged in the mail every single month was like the highlight of my damn day because it was so beautiful. It was this bright yellow, made me feel good already, even though I have no idea if it made me feel better. It was just getting that package and having that experience of opening it and seeing it was just, it was amazing, you know, made me feel like.
It's so great when you get a package that you just love the package almost as much as what's inside of it. And even back to the beer or the wine, how many times have you sat down, had a couple glasses or a couple beers, and sat there and just spun that bottle or can around and peeled the label? And that's really, I think, where you get people and they're like, maybe it's not the taste that's really selling it, but it's part of the experience, and they feel good that they're drinking a beer with a forest on it. Whether they rape the mountain of the spring water to make it, whatever, like they still see trees and they're like, because this is who I am. And Edward, who you heard earlier and still in the nest, talks about, you know, people being aspirational about who they think they are, and packaging is definitely that. I mean, it's the makeup case, it's the beer box. When someone comes in your fridge, you know you drink PBR, but you have a 12-pack of New Belgium beer in there, so people are like, oh wow, he's a craft beer drinker.
Fancy.
I have a product that is my equivalent of your vitamins, and it's Cricket shirts, and they're a company out of Austin, Texas, and they design these golf shirts that are kind of the old school 70s, like the old Seve Ballesteros, Jack Nicklaus days, where you had a collar stay in your collar and there was a pocket on the chest. But they've modernized the cut, and they've modernized the materials. But when you it's all mail order, and when you order them, you get a paper bag, and it's kind of one of those zip open self mailers, but it says Guna Galuga on it because they're all golf themed, right? And it's just like the first time I got that, I literally took a picture of it because I wanted to be able to look back on it and remember it, but I also didn't want to keep the packaging. I recycled it, but hold on, I gotta pat myself on the back.
Don't break your arm.
Recycling it, but
Good job.
Yes.
you know, it just and that's a case where they know their target is 35 to 55-year-olds, right? Males, and they do this Caddyshack theme. They have, you know, everything is sort of Bill Murray references, and Luke Wilson is one of the backers of this company. But it's totally packaging, even down to, you know, the bag inside the bag, or the gift bag you get when you give it to somebody, and so I think it's just whenever that packaging and the product come together, that's the
Well,
That's
knowing
like
your
the whole
audience.
deal.
And
Right.
what's worse than buying something that's packaged beautifully and you open it and you're like, this is garbage? Like, they have to be working at the same level. Or you take a really great product that could have been amazing, but they never took the time to package it correctly. I mean, it'd be interesting to know how many great products would have been super popular and famous had they packaged it correctly, or even marketed it correctly. Something I think we should not step over in talking about packaging is how crazy it is sometimes to actually design this stuff. Kelsey and I, basically a template lands at our table, and for example, I don't know how many years ago this was, even before I had even designed packaging, I unfolded and unglued a pack of cigarettes. I'm not saying to smoke, but it might be worth buying
Right.
a pack. Throw the cigarettes away. Don't smoke them.
Nope.
But unwrap this thing. It is insane how many folds and how many things have to be designed perfectly. So when you fold this thing up and glue it, it makes a cigarette box.
Do you guys do that?
Yeah.
Part of it? Or
Oh,
do you-
oh yeah,
or
and,
you
and,
have
and
to
you'll see
figure
it.
that out
And
as well?
what's
That's like a lot of
You should
fucking math, right?
swing. You should swing by my desk and
It's-
see all my mini mock-ups.
I see them.
what's funny watching Kelsey is we work together on a lot of this stuff. She's been taking the brunt of a lot of packaging lately.
Uh-huh.
And looking back 10 years, remembering when I was jumping into it, it's jumping into fire. Like if you're not around the industry or you haven't failed a bunch of times, like it's its own language. And to look at something flat and design it, I swear to God, put it in front of anybody and you're going to watch their head tilt because they're
How's that go
thinking
together?
about if that bottom flap folds over the top, is this,
Yeah.
I need to design it upside down on this section. This side needs
That's
to
so
be
confusing.
backwards. So when you put this thing together, it makes this box. And that ultimately looks very simple when everyone sees a box, the logo on it. And you're like, oh, you just print a logo on that.
No.
It's
not-
pretty
it's
crazy.
not that.
But watching her make these little prototypes of her stuff, she'll print it and it's like tiny, like this box that would
Mm-hmm.
fill a quarter of this table is in her hand. I totally did that with every project because you almost have to, you second guess yourself so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then not
I
only
feel like I'm still second guessing.
oh, and you will, and I still do too. Every time you see that template, it's a Rubik's cube, and you're like, "Holy fuck, how does this work?" but it is, to me, it's like my favorite shittiest thing to do because I think in
a
design
puzzle.
the most rewarding shit is solving it.
Yeah.
It's
And
solving a
how do you
problem.
get their
Yeah.
logo on there properly? How do you let the customer know what's in that packaging, which is a big deal? I don't know how many times you've seen packaging and you're like, it looks beautiful. What is it? Like, what's inside that piece of cardboard or plastic?
Yeah.
Kelsey's done a great job with it, and it's fun watching her sort of
Yeah.
jump in, and she's really been killing it. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Well, yeah,
process.
I mean, like so I feel like those are all good points, but like going a step above that, like how do we invoke a feeling from our consumers, right? Like how do we get that packaging from just doing its job to like making it a statement, right? So I think like having, and like we're very fortunate because we're working with a really great brand that has a lot of great assets that we can use to our disposal. So I think having that it's great. But it makes it easier just because when you work with a really, really great brand and a really, really great product, like I think that it just comes naturally after the fact, like doing the hard work up front, but then going through the mind fuck of actually making a package. But it just gets easy. You just make mini mock-ups and you put pencils on them. It's great.
Going back to an earlier topic, do you think the end of the movie 7 would have been better if the head had been better packaged?
like
in the
a
box.
head of lettuce package.
Spoiler.
I
It
just
could've-
watched
Spoiler.
that like a week ago.
It could have been a great product endorsement, some placement
Yeah.
in there.
You could have done some
maybe
real
Harry's
great-
Shave Club or something.
Right.
Right.
Oh man, missed
Bedhead.
opportunity. Yeah, bedhead. Oh,
If I think the box was
Yes.
blank.
Like it.
The box was blank,
It was
wasn't it? Or
blank.
was there anything on it?
I think it was blank.
I haven't seen that in 20 years.
Yeah, we'll do some research and
It's a
I think
bowling
it's
ball.
on. I think it's on
Yeah.
Netflix now.
Brunswick.
I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. So can you rewatch?
No, you missed this. You obviously didn't listen to this particular podcast. Maybe it was episode 0, was it?
Might have been episode 0.
But
Might have been.
yeah, I will never watch that movie again.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I don't like that
It's
movie.
gut wrenching.
That's the one for
Yeah,
me.
I
love that
couldn't
movie.
sleep.
Sean's was Requiem for a Dream, I believe.
Yes. I
You
also
will
love
never
that
rewatch
movie.
that movie.
Yeah.
Warm fuzzies.
The warmest
And Jody's was Dumbo. He doesn't ever want to see that again.
sad. That's a
Oh,
sad
movies.
cartoon, though.
Yeah, I felt
Yeah.
bad. That and Bambi.
Bambi
Kel-
every time.
Kelly's is Dumb and Dumber.
I
just
Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber.
no. The first one I would put in my top 10 for sure.
Well, of course. No, but
Yeah.
this is
You mean you had gloves this
sequels
whole
never
time?
watch it.
Yeah.
So little known industry secret here is that I'm not a designer.
You're not?
No,
What now?
no,
Sure?
no. Wanted to share that.
We're all designers.
But I had a lot of fun going through and looking at some good and bad packaging examples and kind of looking at it through the lens more of a consumer because I don't have that experience that you guys have.
Right.
So up on the screen is probably my favorite that I came across, and it is a packaging for laces of Converse. I'm a big Converse guy. Wear a lot of Converse. And so this really jumped out at me, just the cool, different, like, the way that it interfaces. And on the pink shoelace one, sorry for the audio listeners, you can see obviously that it's it's coming out both sides to wrap around, and that's how it would be presented in a store. So I just loved that. So again, function and design makes.
Are there shoes in those boxes, and then the laces function as the bag handle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's what it looks like to me.
Right, but they're not the laces of the shoes that are in the box.
Yeah.
They're just additional laces. Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Wonder if you could use them for that.
They're an extra pair. Probably.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a
smart.
bonus.
That
Yeah, girl.
see.
Mel, who
Format
couldn't
function.
join us today, she had a note about this
RX
topic.
bar.
RX.
Yeah, about RX bars, and also
Right.
about in our Super Bowl episode, I believe, is when we discussed
Bubbly.
bubbly and
mean
more
buble?
simple packaging. And
Sorry.
someone
Dave.
someone made the comment that sometimes more simple type of packaging can make it seem like it's just the store brand, but
Yeah.
I don't know if
yeah.
I necessarily agree with that. Like, one of my favorite examples of like a simple thing of packaging is Crush beer and the sours. So cute. I think it's the cucumber sour is
Yeah.
the best packaging
10
example. And
10
that
Barrel does a great job
Yeah.
of being, there's beer inside this can, and here's what kind of beer it is. The end.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Drink
these energy bars or RX bars do the same thing, and I think there's a place for that.
I mean, you know what you're getting, literally. Like,
Yeah.
it's-
And they're
Yeah, and-
zigging when they're zagging,
I mean,
and
it
it's
doesn't mean
its
it
own
tastes good,
design. It's
but-
its own design sort of personality.
and there's
right?
contrast among
Yeah.
the different flavors. Obviously,
I think it's strong in its own right. It's just not my thing. Kelsey, I don't know how many years separate us. I'm gonna say 10. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm getting old now. There's a lot of stuff where I think Kelsey and I look at, and she's like, "This is great. Look how," she says "cute" a lot. So I'll just sorry
Oh,
for
you
quoting.
look
You
how
know.
cute.
And for
You know?
me, being 10 years older and identifying with other brands, sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't buy that. I don't think it's cute.
Yeah.
I don't.
Not for the packaging.
No, it's fair.
And that's just a crazy thing. And I think it's really cool that her and I get to work together on stuff because she's in a different market than I am. And I think we can meet halfway a lot of the time, or at least have that discussion, whether it's pulled over one side or the other.
How hard is it as a designer when there's something that you're not the target demo on it, right?
Yeah.
But you're designing for a specific cute target demo. How hard is that as a designer where you're
Put yourselves in the shoes. of
yeah,
the target.
exactly. How hard is that though? If that's not something that really you dig.
I mean, it depends on your attitude that day, I think. I think as a designer and a creative person, you always want to say, here's what I would do. Here's what I would design so I would buy it. But it's also that it's still a fun challenge to be like, what does that person want? I mean, I don't know how many times I've stumbled on like a heavy metal font, and if let's say we got like a Depends diaper like packaging, I don't know why I went there.
Heavy metal and Depends. I love that.
But I'd be like, put the heavy metal font
Yeah.
on the Depends. These guys grew up with AC/DC and all. Oh, sorry, Ed, you're not.
Oh, no, I'm not there yet. Jesus.
51.
I am
But-
wearing
well,
oops. I
that's-
shit my pants.
Dribble.
That's when you have to rein it back and be like, that. It's
Right.
not the appropriate font. It's not the appropriate design. And I think Kelsey and I have to do that every day. And it's not a horrible thing. And I think sometimes you'll see misses out there where you're like, wow, that they missed the target for that. Whether it was targeted to me, but it's for a different demographic. Or,
Sometimes the miss also happens not in the design process, but in the production process.
Yeah.
Right.
So here's my big pet peeve. I will occasionally shop at Whole Foods, or as some people call it, Whole Paycheck, and they have these great paper bags that make you feel good about yourself because it's biodegradable, and I'm gonna put my compost in it and stick it in the compost bin, and these great cool paper bags that have handles, but the handles come unglued halfway out to the car every
Sure.
fucking
Sure
time,
do.
and you've got a whole bag of groceries spread out across the parking lot.
My first job was a courtesy clerk, which essentially means I'm a bagger. And my
Oh.
advice to you would be carry from the goddamn bottom.
Yeah,
as well.
if you know it's heavy, you carry
Then
from the
why
bottom.
did you
Handles on
put
it.
handles
Don't put
on
handles
the
on it.
bag?
Yeah.
I understand that.
If you're
I've
gonna
been-
put a
I've been
handle
dealing
on
with
it, it's
paper
gotta be-
bags my
yeah.
whole life. I know that you hold from the bottom, and I always held from the bottom because there weren't handles on the goddamn bag.
Okay.
Right? When they put a handle on it, it implies use the goddamn handle.
I'm going to agree with that. Handles imply carry with
Get
the
a
Are
handles.
you in
Reusable bag.
agreement?
I am in agreement.
I also
With
am in
Eddie.
agreement.
Yes, and you should be using a reusable bag, but
And that's a good point. Like if you're gonna make packaging, make sure it's suitable for what it is. I've done it a couple times with La Croquis. How do you say it, Danielle?
Oh, it's a new one.
Yeah.
Tio.
La Croquis.
Oh my goodness.
LaCroix.
Oh Lord.
Where there's a handle on the box, and I'm walking across the parking lot to put it in my car, and 2 seconds before I open my door, that handle rips.
That is
spills
okay.
out.
To be fair, that is every single can
I agree.
Okay.
beverage.
I agree, and it's never happened to me.
Yeah, that's what I.
Also-
All right,
Okay,
if you're putting
also-
cans,
there's a problem. They fix it with those plastic rings that get stuck
Yeah.
on dolphins' noses.
yeah,
That's why
they,
you cut them though.
They made a biodegradable one that fish can eat.
I make my husband cut them.
I don't know. I don't know what's made out of
All right, so
plastic. That
This just got
Flavored plastic.
really, really passionate. But my favorite part of this is watching Ed and Danielle fight over the Nest microphone.
Yeah.
have you
it's
been
really
videoing
cute.
this, please?
I got a little bit of it, but I didn't get the part where Danielle like ripped the microphone out of
you know
Eddie's
the
hand.
the nest is hard. The nest is hard to hold back. Like you hear things you want to talk about and you want to jump in there, but maybe we don't know the etiquette.
Well, they
yet.
not. Neither one of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
two have any problems jumping into the fray. They're just fine.
I had one example of bad packaging that
Oh, great. There's so
fucking
many.
loved. I know,
Yeah.
but it's
Oh,
it's
yes,
this-
the avocado halves. Okay, so any
What
monster,
is the point of this?
Any monster would split an avocado. A, take out the seed. B, that shit's gonna get so brown so fast.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, why do you,
What about the
Avocados have-
unnecessary packaging?
It's
Avocados have
unnecessary
natural
packaging.
Is this an
Whole
avocado
Foods-
from Mexico?
Do you guys remember when Whole Foods
fruit.
would peel oranges and put them in a plastic container?
fucking
Yeah.
And
monsters?
they lit on fire. I did hear something recently though that I was like, oh okay,
There's an explanation.
kind of. Yes, I was like, yes, there is. It's accessibility.
No, he's
Apparently, it's
fixing what
accessibility.
we ruined.
That if you had an instance where your hands weren't able to peel an orange, then you could
Oh.
probably at least pop a top off this thing. And I don't know if that's it sounds like a real thing, but
That's-
I don't know if that was this is
Yeah.
why we did it, or if it was people
We
are
need to find
so
an
horrible
excuse.
that they're like, I am too fucking lazy to peel an orange, so I'm gonna go spend extra money on one that's pre-peeled.
This is made for people who are eating their fucking avocado on the subway, right?
Yeah. And I was about to jump in and play devil's advocate. Okay, let's say you
Devil's avocado, Larry.
we were talking about these these mini billboards or commercials for consumers, right?
Right.
We work with an Apple client, and sometimes that apple lands in the Apple pile with a PLU sticker, which is the size of your thumbnail, and there's no room for a logo. So, devil's advocate, this avocado packaging here, if you can't see it, it's individually wrapped
We'll throw.
Seed?
It's Calavo.
Pre-seeded and pre-peeled.
If you want to Google that.
But they have the opportunity now to say fresh and ripe, which is probably
Oh, it is
not
fresh and ripe. I
true.
didn't even see it.
They also put new on there, which always is a good
it
selling
better
point.
be.
But then they go on to say some obvious
also
things like
gluten-free.
gluten free,
Trans fat free, all natural, keep
So
refrigerated.
maybe this is for that lazy person that doesn't eat avocados. There are those food deserts, they call them, where they don't have access to fresh fruit or vegetables. Maybe this is kind of a gateway into being like, oh, I have had an avocado. And you all know there was a time in your life where you did not know how to pit an avocado without cutting your hand off.
I would have less of a problem with this if it was one half of an avocado,
Like, you only need
or
a
like if they
right.
were selling them individually. But
Right.
because this is it's a fucking whole avocado.
I
that's
eat a whole avocado almost every morning.
I understand that, and you like are an adult that can cut it and pit it, and you don't need it in a fucking box. Like,
Yeah, no. I was playing devil's advocate.
I
I'm
know,
not a
no, I
fan
know.
of this. That's plastic and
at
cardboard.
least
that
it's
doesn't need to be
100%
done.
avocado.
Oh, it does say 100% avocado.
Which
There's nothing else in there. It's
There's-
great.
no.
That's all we
No, that's
want.
good.
That's an advantage over a real avocado because it's 90% avocado and 10% seed.
No, that's
That
it.
pit.
It's an avocado seed. I'm going to say it's 100% avocado. You just
Yep.
don't want to eat it all. I mean, you could eat an
I
avocado
did one
seed.
time on
Take a couple of
Reddit
those up on the way
see
home.
this avocado that someone got that was like 95% pit and 5% avocado.
But then
So
you get the other extreme.
you do
And I got one of those the other day, and it was the
Lottery.
best day of my life.
avocado lottery.
It was, yeah.
Exciting.
It is very exciting. You never know what you're gonna get in there.
So what do you guys think packaging wise? There's a zero waste market opening up in town. So now your stuff's in bins and it's in bulk and there's no branding and there's no packaging, and you bring a sack like you are on Little House on the Prairie and they fill you up with your oats. I'm sure they have other stuff there. I'm just
Come
picturing
on,
oats.
Ma, let's
It
go
is
check
just
it
like
out.
Little House on the Prairie.
So they're doing a great thing for the world. If we can eliminate packaging, of course, everything gets better. Waste, all these things. But me, not the target market,
Right.
but I'll bitch about it anyways because that's what people do. We're Americans. Too inconvenient for me. Thank you very much. I got to bring my own bags now, and then I got to get it home and then put them in a container they're not going to go bad or airtight. I'm just going to put that out there. I want something minimally packaged, but I don't want to have to package it myself.
Well, if
And bulk food just creeps me out.
man,
Hmm.
but how do you differentiate? Like what you're saying, if I've got the yummy candies that are selling bulk, and so does the jackass down the street, mine are better candies. How do I differentiate that if it's in the bulk bin? I can't. Right?
That's tough, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
obviously, for me as a candy maker, I want to differentiate with my packaging.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're ever gonna get rid of packaging.
Kelsey's going to jump in here. She's just getting her AOC tattoo finished up real quick.
Thank you. I do
quickly.
love her.
And then,
I just watched her take a
and now
couple
we're
deep
done.
breaths.
Tell us what you think,
Okay,
Kelsey.
so I mean, there's two sides of this for me because I am a person that loves artwork and I am a person that loves design and I love things that have a function, but I do also love our planet and I do also love doing the right thing, and I do. I try to be the most positive person I can every single day. It's a challenge. But I do think that having the mindset of sustainability and of forward thinking, especially in our current situation with climate change and with our economy, et cetera, you can name multiple factors. I think that having something like a roots market for the people who don't mind to take that extra step and value how much output they bring every single day. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah. There's a place for everything. Absolutely. And I feel like just because there are a bulk food section in your Fred Meyer or in a specialty store or an Albertsons, like I think that you can, if you want to be like, I have a theory that there's 3 different types of shoppers. One of them's brand loyalty. Second one is price. Third one's good design. So I think that like if you want to fall in one of those categories, like by all means, like do what's right for you. And I don't think that we should be naysayers about everything.
That's funny because I buy a lot of consumer grocery items. I'm a cook, and so I'm very brand loyal to the things that I'm brand loyal to.
Right, because you know how they're going to act.
But I would also love to go to a bulk butcher shop.
Right.
If I could go and look at the sides of beef and decide this is, this one's choice, this one's top third of choice, this one's prime, this one's Wagyu. I want this piece cut off of that quarter, and I'll go home and trim it myself. I would totally Little House on the Prairie it because it's important to me in that particular ingredient.
Right.
But yeah, with my spaghetti, I
like your
want the
bouillon,
stuff
like-
packaged in the Barilla box because they use copper things, and so
I think that there's a time and place, and I think that it's just solely your own discretion as a person. Like I would much rather me being some weird person that has parents who are kind of mostly hippie, like I would like to grow my own stuff. Like I feel like there's just a time and place for everything, right? Yeah. So I think it's what's important to you. Exercise it,
Speaking
but also
of growing
be
your own
mindful.
stuff, in the area of cannabis, I am leery of packaging. The more it's marketed, the
And in
more the
fitness.
slicker the packaging, the more I'm like, that feels a little too slick,
Right.
and I don't know if it's healthy or whatever. I
Right.
kind of want to go pretty granola-y.
Yes.
And that's why, for me, the Willie Nelson, the Willie's Reserve, is a great brand because Willie looks like a tumbleweed.
Yeah.
And so it's packaged, but it's kind of packaged like,
Like you can trust it.
Yeah.
And
Are you talking flour or oil also? Like how does the package, because like you have to package the oil cartridges.
Right. But if they're overly designed, I almost feel like you
They're
just
like
want
they're
something
I don't
hiding.
know enough
says-
about weed. I was like, are we back to bulk food?
I think if you go back to those to the
I do
the
love
ones
what is that little
Mel
thing? They have
sent
a
over,
carrot.
the
It's really cute.
bars.
Yeah.
Oh, they are
Yeah.
bars. Yes.
So this is how you should package cannabis, in my opinion.
I agree.
It's like, this is what it does.
Here you go.
This is how you're gonna feel,
But
or this is the pain that it's gonna address, and then you put it in a good solid color. But the minute you start like, having cats with lasers, it loses me. But I'm a
But I would say to argue like that's exactly what happened to our food packaging, right? So like we used to only start with like a certain amount of companies who produce a certain amount of food, but as soon as more people got into that market, that's when people
You have to
needed
differentiate yourself.
themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that's how we saw that awesomely with the cannabis.
Which is one of the great things about working in advertising
Industry.
is that good advertising begets better advertising.
Right.
Good marketing begets more marketing.
Right.
And it's a self-perpetuating thing. As long as we're in a capitalist society
Right.
that lets free market dictate what people buy.
Right.
The minute you leave a free market system, then packaging, marketing, all that is nil.
And another thing that, speaking on your terms, I think like what we tend to have a disagreement on is like simplicity. Am I wrong or am I correct?
Coming from an illustrative background, I try
Right.
to tell as much story as I can in one piece.
Yes.
Where I do envy designers like yourself that can tell it with less. I'm just always like, how much cool shit can I put on one piece of paper?
I do think I had a professor that told me one time that it's hard to make something simple. It's easier to make it clustered. So
Those are people that can't draw.
exactly. No, what I'm saying is like
That's a
that's
good
just
point.
like that's a good point.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's from the starting point in which
Yeah.
you came from.
Yeah.
Well,
So I feel
look at music, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You can't say that Queen, which was layers upon layers upon layers,
Right.
is better or worse than something that is
Made-
super simple.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Like you can't. It's just preference.
Yeah, and
what it
in
serves its
writing,
function for.
in writing, you master the basics before you can pepper in like
Mhm.
flouncy punctuation and stuff. Like you have to be able to master it before you can employ all of these things. So it's
Exactly.
like if you can be a master like Mr. Knop, K-Dog,
Not
be a fucking master.
not a master by any means. But
Okay, bye.
I thanks for saying that, by the way. That's very nice. I do learn a lot from designers like Kelsey because there is a balance, and it's also very important to remember why you're designing it. There are very good projects and good packaging. While we're on that topic, that requires something. A beer box from a company that is very illustrative on their labels is probably gonna be pretty busy.
Right.
Kelsey and I looked at a brewery today, which is really kind of the point of what you brought up. It's very poppy. It's very similar it's very simple.
Are you talking
and-
about Halo?
Yeah.
You can, if you want to Google Halo, you can Google.
Wait,
Halo.
Halo.
Halo Brewery,
It's
it's out of
just it's,
Canada.
again, it's preference.
Right.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
buy that beer because I'm like, oh, that's Shapes and Trapper Keeper, and that's not my style. I don't want my beer to be that.
Trapper
It
Keeper.
looks cool as shit. I give it respect, and to be able to build your whole brand off of those shapes and colors, cool.
Oh, cool. I see.
but
Yeah.
it's all art, right?
But what they have done though is I haven't seen a brewery brand themselves like that.
Yeah.
Which is if you're going to put that on a shelf,
Differentiation.
it sticks out. You're
Right.
going to be like, what is this? And that's it. That's always
Right.
what you're going for is like, what
Yeah.
is this?
I mean, it's just it provides inquiry.
That's
right?
interesting because I feel like you've designed some wine bottles that look very similar to this. So
we'll put that up on the video. Not even close. But
Yeah.
colors, maybe. Colors.
Colors. I mean, like general direction, yes, maybe.
Yeah, and that was heavily art directed. Sometimes the client will beat the shit out of
all
a
I would
project.
say is that the way this is going to stick out on the beer shelf is similar to what your client's
I agree.
wine did on the wine shelf.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff out there that I won't even tell people I did. Let's leave it at that.
Oh yeah.
Is that because you were following directives straight from the client that stray from your aesthetic?
Yeah.
Well, hold on, that's not a product that you're being a little bit self-depreciating now because I think that you would not that those particular wine bottles. I don't think you're.
Oh
ashamed
no!
of.
No!
I think
not at
you
all.
would tell people you did.
I'm
Yeah.
happy with how those turned out. I will say I would not have come to that design by myself.
Right.
And I like how they turned out.
Right.
I'm just saying that there's a lot of projects I've been involved in where the client insists on going their way, and and you do your best to explain to them that this is not going to be good for your business, and you're at a standstill, and you got to get paid.
Did
so
you know that
do it.
avocados already have a package around them?
They come prepackaged from nature.
And someone probably was
Wow.
like, "You want us to package avocados? Why?"
Right.
That doesn't seem like a good idea.
No, but you know what? In our business, nobody says why. They go, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Get paid for that,
absolutely.
right?
That is the best
Yeah.
idea I've ever heard. The people who have the only people who have ever said why are the ones that are the famous ones. Lee Clow would say why,
And
You know,
shit.
Dan Wyden would
Yeah.
say why.
Yeah.
Those Leo Burnett's. Those are the gods of our industry because they would challenge. They weren't yes men. They would challenge their clients to do something different, do something better.
Right.
Do you have to be in probably a certain financial position to be able to question your client like that?
You know, I have to be, but it sure as hell helps.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the thing.
Hell.
Here's the thing. You can question why from the very beginning of your career, and you'll eventually be successful in your late 60s, early 70s. You can kind of play the game for a little bit and get some credibility, and then start to question why, and then you get to be successful like in your 50s or 40s, and it lasts longer. But you're constantly asking yourself, why you should be constantly asking yourself, am I adding or am I subtracting? Am I moving the business forward? Am I moving the industry forward, or am I just riding the wave? Because I think that ultimately advertising people don't get to save anyone on an operating table and don't get to end world hunger. So you better be doing something good with your work, right?
Yeah,
You
right,
better be.
right.
You better be. Unless you're just in it for the money, which I'm sure some people are.
Which
But
is
I
fair.
don't
I
think
mean-
that's very, very common specifically in the agency business. I mean,
Maybe the NCN business.
well,
NCN
yeah.
business.
I think I meet a lot of agency owners, and I can pick an agency owner out who's in it for the money versus one who's in it because they're passionate about the business
Yeah.
in 5 minutes.
Right.
Right. Tell us how.
The ones that are in it for the money are always looking to productize what they do. They're not happy just to say, hey, I have a lot of really talented, smart people who understand how human beings do things, and everything is customized, and we're going to help this client achieve ROI, solve their business problems through our work. The ones that productize it, are looking to sell, looking to like generate X amount each month, or they have these metrics built in about how they're going to build their sales. Those folks just are in it for the money, right?
Right. And they're and I feel like they're probably more likely willing to cut corners too, especially for clients.
Yeah, and what happens to a lot of those agencies is they hook onto a big client who has a lot of, like in your case, in designer's case, they have a lot of production work,
Yeah.
and it just becomes a sweatshop of kicking out stuff, and they serve a useful function, but they're just cogs in a wheel.
Right.
I have a lot of physician friends who will tell you that's how they feel. They get paid while they're working, right? They're just a machine that has to, and if they're not working, they're not getting paid. And very few of them have figured out how to turn being a physician into a business that pays you all the time, which is why healthcare costs are so high, because they have this short window, and they say, yeah, I got to charge X amount in order to buy my Mercedes and keep up with the other doctor in my group. And so, you know, the real secret is finding out how to, you know, make your job your passion, and do, you know, if you're in it because you love what you do, then you'll build a business around that. And the Patagonia guy is a great example of this. He was talking about how there's only that public companies, you know, they have to grow 15% a year regardless, because otherwise then their stockholders aren't happy, right? As a private company, he can say grow 3% one year and grow 10% the next year, maybe shrink a little bit the year after that. And what he said to describe this, he said there's growth that makes you fat and there's growth that makes you strong. And he focuses on the growth that makes you strong.
That's good.
That's a
It
great,
is.
a great segue into just, I think that's what I'm talking about in a business perspective.
Sure. I'll go full circle here, to be fair to Kelsey. When we started this segment, my favorite packaging, or at least the smartest, not my favorite, smartest, was Apple. And I don't know how much simpler you can get than
Yeah.
Very
that.
true. Very
Shows you
true.
what it is.
So,
Shows you who it
Very
is.
true.
just want to say to everyone listening out there,
Simple but highly detailed.
well,
like
the
all
packaging,
the little, but they thought through a lot of little details.
they did.
The design.
I
is
just-
simple.
I guess I wanna-
The artwork is.
We
Simple.
were gonna get a backpedal sound effect, so I have high respect for it, and I've always felt this way as a creative, that I always have so much respect for a style that doesn't come easy, and I feel like that's probably a similar
Yeah.
thing.
No,
Because you
it's
look at someone,
perfect.
you're like, man, if I could just, you make doing things simple so simple, and I struggle with that, and so it is something that
It's always a challenge to make
Yeah,
something simple.
for sure.
Because then,
sure.
because if it's simple, there's more glaring problems with it.
I will. God, I always get buttons pushed. I will say, if you have to backward logic something so simple and put such a story behind it, bullshit.
It's not simple.
And I'm not saying I don't know the Halo guys. I don't know who designed that stuff.
Yeah.
But if they're gonna say this pink circle and this green triangle together, it talks about how long it fermented, and it talks about the history of
The
brewing.
abstract.
Fuck off, dude. Like seriously, there's and it's in fine art, it's in design, it's in everything. Where it's like, I don't get it. Well, let me tell you a very long story. Fuck off.
Well, that doesn't win on the shelf.
No.
no.
I mean, if I don't
people-
get it-
No, it doesn't.
But no.
That's pretty.
So I feel like
It might if you have some backup commercials that show
It depends on the product.
The Fire Festival.
Yeah.
Orange Square. Orange Square wouldn't have meant anything if it wasn't for the Kardashian and that video they
Yeah.
made.
It was
Is that what it was?
Jenner.
She's
It
a
was
Jenner.
Oh my god, my wife would be so disappointed.
But I don't think that the Orange Square was like that was just an attention getter to take over the
that
internet.
was a social strategy.
Yeah,
It wasn't
just
packaging.
that
sure,
was
but without context.
yeah, exactly.
It's
What
just
is that?
a
right, right.
Right.
And that Halo branding is just a circle.
Yeah.
Yep.
That works if you can tell a story. I went to their website and I was like, that's a beautiful tap room. All of their stuff together makes a really cool palette of colors and shapes. They're different than any other brewery out there. So smart. But if maybe I'll run into them one day and they'll say, you know what that means? And I'll say bullshit.
They'll be like, "Fuck
Talk
you,
to it.
Kelly. I
Talk
heard
to
that
it, Kelly.
podcast."
And that's how you went to
couldn't
jail.
afford Adobe. You just got
Media. We want
paint
your
and you can
voice.
pull out some.
Okay, so here's my deal with that. So if
Give me the
you
deal.
okay.
Buttons pushed.
Oh, I have no button.
All right, go ahead.
Push.
Pushed.
I honestly think that having someone make art onto a package is a beautiful thing. And like I think that no matter what it is, whether it's illustration or whether it's design work or whether it's color theory or psychology, whatever you want to put, like if it serves its purpose and if it does its job for the client, I think it's a beautiful thing. And like I mean at a soul base, right? Like at like the very, very bottom line.
There's a very famous agency who will go unnamed because they get plenty of press on their own, who basically said that advertising is art in commerce,
Exactly.
right?
So, and
Yeah.
I do think, and then like leeway to that,
Art
like,
serving commerce, I think.
Yeah.
Might be the.
in leeway to that, like I do really love it when companies, and I wrote so for this thing, I wrote a blog.
I love how
Oh my
prepared you are.
I know.
Thank you.
That's
The
amazing.
angel of the entire world.
Absolutely.
So I follow a bunch of artists on Instagram because that's just what I use Instagram for. Sorry if I don't follow anyone here.
You follow the podcast. It's
I
okay.
follow the podcast. No, it's just great. I'm trying to be a better friend. That was like one of my New Year's resolutions was to be a better friend. So I'm following my friends. But I really
Posted a puppy picture, so you should probably follow me
okay
because you like puppy
I do love
pictures.
puppies.
It was an adorable puppy picture.
Okay.
Thank you.
I should follow you. We just became Facebook friends, so I feel like I owe you that one. I love it when I see artists get paired up with big fucking companies and you know that they're being taken care of.
Totally.
Like I really like it makes me so happy to see people like Conrad or I talked about Timothy Goodman earlier, who's a really great illustrator from New York. He went to fucking, what is it called? Sundance Film Festival in Park City.
Yep.
He did work with Chase Bank and made cool shit, but that's not really packaging, but he did like artwork on people's books.
But it's
and
a
stuff
similar
like that.
concept.
But it's a similar concept. So I think having that be more readily available to a consumer base for a product makes it known that artwork is so fucking valuable. Like what we do is so valuable, and it's something that shouldn't be just overlooked because it's just so saturated. It's something to be always admired for what it is, and something to always be valued for what it is, because someone put a lot of time into something, whether it means sense or not. Like something was created for a purpose, and I think that in itself is a beautiful thing and should be respected. And like everyone has their preferences, and everyone can can say, I don't really like this. It's like, I don't like Heinz ketchup. Like I think like that shit's bullshit, right? I think it's the same thing, right? It all washes out. But I think having that like admiration for like, there was someone who poured a lot of effort and heart and soul into something means something, whether if it's good or not, right?
Well,
It's art.
yeah, I have more respect for the good stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Good.
that's okay.
I don't know. I have a hard time with the whole everyone's an artist, everything is beautiful.
I'm not saying everyone's an artist.
Not everyone.
Not everyone's a good artist.
Not everyone. Let's clarify that statement.
But I think in that
I
realm,
feel like
though,
if you have control over your media and you did make an effort to, then all the respect to you. I don't care how it turned out, but if you're gonna, goddamn, like spill paint and like splatter shit, I'm sorry, like.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's some tactfulness.
Good.
I enjoy abstract art. There's some out there that I can stare at for
Jackson
hours.
Pollock fan.
I respect it.
Okay.
I wouldn't hang it in my house. I respect it. I do a lot of artwork that people look at and say is garbage, I'm sure. And
Who, if you could only meet one classic artist, who would it be? And I'm talking let's say pre 20th century.
Arthur Sykes, he was it's not pre 20th century, but World War II. Is that far enough
That's
back?
close enough.
He was a Jewish illustrator that did a lot of political cartoons throughout the Holocaust. And it's
Oh,
gory, and it's really, it's like, to me, when someone says, explain this guy's stuff, it's Norman Rockwell with guns and blood. It's really well done stuff.
It's a great description of
a
it.
lot of really crazy topics. And for him to be a Jewish illustrator in that time drawing that stuff
Super
was
daring.
super dangerous.
Yeah.
His shit is amazing.
Cool.
So-
I love that.
How about you, Kelsey?
I don't think mine's pre 20th century either.
Who?
Mondrian?
Wait, I'm that's mine.
Yeah.
And I think it's Pierre Mondrian. I think that's
yeah.
close to pre 20th century.
It's close.
Maybe what, 1910s?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Somewhere in there, maybe.
Yeah. But spectrum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One
for sure.
man's great
Well,
artist, another man's good.
But actually, those
Yeah.
two answers are indicative of the last 20-minute conversation. right?
Exactly.
I mean,
Sorry, we had a long
that's
conversation about
exactly-
that.
but there's
Yeah.
more.
Don't be sorry. It was a great conversation.
There's more than one right answer.
But I will say, and we stumbled into this, having a creative team that has different point of views and likes is way stronger than everyone being like,
Absolutely.
"Oh, I love the same shit,"
Right.
because we don't.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that, and it's respected, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and challenge too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, sometimes you.
Sometimes you put out some shit.
Wait, hey,
I
do.
was gonna say, like, so you push me to be a better designer and
That's
a
what you
better.
meant to say. Yeah. You pushed
Okay,
her.
before we start singing
just said
Kumbaya,
it.
does anyone realize that the podcast ended 20 minutes ago or so?
No.
No.
Oh, it ended at 4:20.
Oh.
it's supposed to end at 4:20.
Something
Oh.
different.
I'm kidding.
No, but it is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but it is that time.
sad.
But thank you, Kelsey, for joining us
Yes.
for the first time.
Thank
We look
you.
forward to having you back on the podcast.
Yes.
Thanks to everyone for listening. Be sure to follow us at AdSquawk Pod. Chirp at us using hashtag AdSquawk with any question, comments, share your favorite bad ads, agency life stories. We want to hear it all. Thanks for pulling up a chair today. And yeah, let's until next time.
Do we all squawk at the end?
Later.
Not every